Okay, we're talking about product-led growth, the two different types, how to execute benefits and drawbacks.
Nice.
Okay, so for you, the two different types of product.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
Freemium and free trial. So the difference being freemium is you have an unlimited version of a product, but it's a scaled back version. Free trial meaning you have the whole suite, but you only have it for a limited amount of time.
Okay, cool.
Definition done.
I'm curious because I've seen more and more people mentioning like this product qualified leads.
Yeah.
I'm sure you come across that term on LinkedIn, like PQL replacing like MQLs or SQLs.
Yeah.
Like, what's your feeling about it?
So product-led growth in general, I think I'm seeing a big shift in the market to where people are starting to, for better or for worse, adapt to how buyers want to buy. Like they don't get a great positive experience with the salesperson, meaning they don't learn anything that they didn't know beforehand. So they just want their hands on the freaking product, which is a whole nother, kind of bag of issues in of itself. But once they get a hold of the product, the stats are half the CAC for leads for product-led growth, more adoption. But I guess the real question is, are you willing to subside to people self-diagnosing and self-prescribing how they should use your product, or do you want to take the reins and teach them in a more meaningful manner? So that's the topic really for debate. Larry, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's a time and a place for the freemium and the free trial. I don't agree with completely removing the human interaction. Because as professionals, and I say that loosely, sales professionals should be experts in their product. They should be expert in the problems that their product solves. Yeah. And to leave it to your prospects to connect the dots, we might have another problem. Houston, we have another problem.
What are your thoughts?
I do not have enough data to really have an opinion that I feel comfortable getting behind.
Yeah.
The questions I would like to ask, and they may already be out there, so if you know them, or Guillaume, if you know them, right, Guillaume, if you know them, and I'm open to hearing them. But the first question I want to ask is, what is the adoption rate across PLG? Not in the really easy ones, but across PLG. What are the adoption rates after they get on it? And when I mean adoption, do they stay on it for 2 or 3 years? Do they get on it for 2 or 3 months? And then if they get on it and it's free, do they actually using it once they get on it? And the reason I have these types of questions is, and then what's the what do you call it? If it's a freemium all the way through, what's the
conversion rates?
Yeah, conversion rate to paid, yes, but more importantly, what's the re-up rate, the resubscribe rate after that first trial period? Like, did you get free forever? Do they keep signing up? And do you keep them? And then what is the conversion? I want to know all that, because here's why. The few times that I've actually got a product-led product that was anything of value to my company, like me as a person, okay, yeah, it's easy. But to my company, I get about 10 minutes in, I'm like, what do I do now? I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to leverage it. I don't know how to maximize it. So I'm like, I'm out.
I think that's interesting, and in my opinion, it really depends on the target, because I see like, and I don't feel like it's only a matter of product-led growth, because if we think of, all those software we're selling enterprise, how many people you've seen using like, where the company is paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for CRMs, for sales automation tool, and then you realize that in the organization, no one is using anything.
Yeah.
Do you know how many reps are actually not filling the CRM or never opening it, even though the company is paying for a seat for them? Yeah. And when you look at like sales team with tens of thousands of people for like the biggest enterprise, it's just crazy.
So I think it highlights a really, really interesting problem that product-led growth is so successful, because again, the CAC is half. You will spend half the money acquiring customers if you go a PLG motion. But I think what it highlights, there's two schools of thought of like, okay, well, we should hypothetically, like the golden keys to the kingdom would be that we're selling in a way that people before the conversation and after the conversation are in a completely different spot for the better because of our conversation. Because sellers aren't there and buyers know it, they just want the product, right? So I think it highlights an interesting situation that when people do take the free trial, especially within freemium models, they do take the freemium model. they start self-educating, they start teaching themselves based on what they know on their problem, you know, like how they can solve for that with the product, and they're better at it than the seller is.
Have you seen that though? Like where have you seen that data and where is that played out?
The data will show you that people want that, and that they essentially, they're better at self-diagnosing. Like if there's a seller involved, but they still have to self-diagnose, versus they just have to self-diagnose without a seller involved. Usually you're going to see conversion rates
No,
stay
not that
static.
piece. The piece they're better at implementing it and using it. That's where I'm curious. Where do you see that? That's the last piece that I'm most interested in.
Oh, well, I haven't seen a huge amount of big, large companies be specifically within B2B, within the product-led motion, except for Slack. Slack's a great example. Everyone knows how to use Slack.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yep.
uses Slack.
That's
They
a good
adopt it
example.
across the organization. But then so for example, when I upgraded for Slack, I only did in the case where I needed to add outside agencies, a la you, to me. And so I self-educated myself that I had a problem that I could no longer fill with the pre-existing version of Slack. So then I upgraded. But I mean, it's a great example of like, I don't need some kind of wizard or some kind of person to come in here and be like, hey, here's how to use direct message. I don't know. So I'm like, go ahead.
I think it's product centric. I mean, again, I don't have a lot of opinions. I'm postulating a lot, but I think it's going to have to be a product that's pretty easy to implement, that has very little friction in using, and doesn't solve a complex problem. Because I'm thinking about something like a full story, right, or a glass box, right? Phenomenal product for us, but there's just no way we were going to figure out that and properly use it. And in my experience is when I get a product like that and I start using it, I can't figure it out, I get frustrated with it and I abandon it. And it's not the product's fault. Right? Like if someone had walked me through it. So
Or like Dropbox. That's another example that you know how to use. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, my feeling is that product-led growth is actually a byproduct of really, really, really bad sales for years.
Yes.
Totally.
Because the thing is, like, you know, like I was chatting with like my CTO the other day, and her experience when purchasing products is very different than mine. And she's like, if I see like request a demo, I'm never gonna ask for it. I don't want to talk to a sales rep that's just gonna be there like to. She doesn't even think about what's the problem. Maybe like she can help me out like solving or whatever. It's just like, no, I don't want to take that demo because I know sales rep. I know they're pushy. I know they're incentivized on hitting their quota, and I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to waste my time. I know I can figure things out by myself. And for me, this is why product-led growth works so well, because you are talking to people who don't want to be manipulated by the image that they have from a sales
Right.
rep.
So the million-dollar question stands. Do you take the ideology of, if you're going to drink, I'd rather you drink in the house kind of thing, of like,
I'm the only one with teenagers,
this is where the industry is. So if we're going to do this, do we speed it up and do we lean into a product-led motion? Because that's where the buyer's pre-existing in sales history, that's how they want to buy. Do you abandon basically the vision, you know, of like, well, in the meantime, while they're not problem-centric sellers and while they're not diagnosing problems, why they refuse to have an expertise, or people look at me every single time that I'm like, you should know your buyer's metrics. They're like, well, what are they? I'm like, figure them out, Brendan, for your like business of like, if that's the MO, do you take on the opinion of, I'd rather you drink in the house and just succumb to a PLG motion?
I think it's like it's a similar question to say like, if you're a doctor, do you prefer to have like a patient coming to you and asking like all the questions, or maybe having them to have like a book where they can self-educate themselves and figure out the solution by
WebMD
themselves?
it out, and they're going to be wrong most of the time.
Yep.
Do you lean in? And the CAC is half. It's half. So it's like the market is showing you, they're like, well, this is smarter. I'm like, for the initial purchase, yes. But what about renewal? And what about upsell? And what about cross-sell and usage?
What's the last sales trend we chased because the CAC was so much less? SDRs, BDRs.
That's what I was thinking.
Look where we are now, right? I'm not saying it didn't work, but at the end of the day, when you let time play itself out, it hasn't been the big win everybody thought it was going to be, right? So I think, to your point, that the CAC is the one, I think it's worth exploring. But if again, no opinion, everybody. I don't know if data, but based on what little I get and what they're telling me, the things I would do after asking these questions is I would set up a product-led growth process.
Yes.
So when somebody came on, we would reach out to immediately and ask them for an implementation specialist.
Yes.
And that job's for us not to sell. It is to ensure that it gets implemented properly, and then we would provide some type of way to feed them information on how to use it, whether it's instructional videos, whether it's a weekly or monthly news that says, hey, are you familiar with this feature? It does this, and guide them along. And then on top of that, Gainsight or others, you owe me for this, I'm gonna have some type of freaking usage evaluator. So when these new people coming on and I'm doing these things, are they using it? And if those two things don't exist, I think product-led growth is going to go down the same tubes as anything else.
I think that if you're going to do it, you need to, number one, do exactly what you're saying. Enable through a problem-centric customer CS without the sales rep.
Yep.
Number two, there are a lot of companies coming to market, like Groundswell is a great example, of they're highlighting basically an interesting moment within PLG, like if it's a video platform, this person just made 20 videos or made 25 videos of like, highlight at least the people that you do know are using it, and have a finite, real-time, automatic lead route playbook of like, oh, this person is making 20 videos, so I'm gonna gate them into a sequence, I'm gonna capitalize on that of like introducing myself, but the conversation has to hinge on, and I like teach this in expansion selling all the time, you have to be talking about an additional problem that they can't solve with your current version of your platform. Otherwise, why would they upsell? And people are like, and I'm like, you gotta talk about that additional problem, otherwise you're hosed. Larry.
I agree. PLG, product-led growth.
PLG in Raleigh.
Raleigh
After NYC, Green Room Candor. This is episode 3 in Raleigh on product-led growth.